Hi, I'm Bonita Rockingham, and welcome to our third season of Holding It Together, a Mennonite Church USA Women in Leadership sponsored podcast. The views expressed on this podcast are my own and are not necessarily indicative of the views of MC USA.
I believe in mutual aid.
I believe in nonviolence. I believe in radical kindness.
I believe deeply in God's commitment to wholeness.
I believe in us. This season of Holding It Together, we are exploring and holding space for the beauty in our beliefs by hearing this I believe statements from folks across our denomination. As people of peace, we experience connection with one another through our core beliefs in following Jesus Christ, witnessing and living God's peace through pacifism, standing up against injustice, and living into God's call of continued transformation. In this season, we will hear how living into those beliefs shape other truths we hold and celebrate the movement of the Spirit working through us in the world. This season, I have been so honored to hold space with so many folks from across the denomination as they've shared their This I Believe statement. And to each of the guests that have shared their stories, thank you. I also realized that as a good host, I should also be willing to share one of my own This I Believe statements. So this episode has one from me. I believe that practicing intentional community can save people's lives. A few years ago, something horrible happened, and my whole world turned upside down. I was 29, and suddenly I needed to quit my job, move 3,000 miles so that I could move back in with my parents, enter into intensive therapy, and learn to identify my experiences with language that I hoped never to know intimately: PTSD and abuse. To be honest, I don't have many memories of that period in my life. I remember that when my world dropped out from underneath me, I screamed a prayer. I called my dad. I texted a friend. I sobbed. I hid in the closet, and I waited. I waited until I heard my dad pick up, the buzzing of the phone line finally quieting behind the steady bass yet warmth of his voice. "We'll fly you home," he promised, "as soon as we can." I waited until I felt the quick pulse of my phone. My friends who were on vacation 6 hours away were coming to get me. I waited until the headache pounding in my ears finally stopped thumping and I could breathe again. Then I waited until I heard the door slam and a car start before I found my suitcase and began to pack. When my friend showed up, he carried my bags to the car, patted my knee the whole way to the house, and reassured me that he and his wife cared. When my dad picked me up at the airport, he reminded me that my old room was ready for me. And when I stepped into my bedroom, a vase filled with flowers from my mother's lush yet tangly garden was tucked by the bed with a poem and a reminder from my mom, "I love you." My best friends tucked me into hugs and offered food. One slipped a house key into my hand and a promise, "My house is yours whenever you need." And over the next month, this community continued to hold me and to expand. Old and new friends reached out, some with gifts, others with words of affirmation, some with food, care packages, books and letters, and many with prayer. And to date, these gentle, intentional acts of community continue to uplift me and save my life. I can imagine that maybe this story sounds like just the beauty of community and the power of friendship, Bonita. But I want to invite us to consider that while this story was personal for me, it's also so much bigger because it speaks to how community can intentionally show up in powerful, life-saving ways. How community can deliberately pay attention to specific needs, tune in to the individual, and develop long-term care practices that fundamentally offer support. While I know how powerful this support has been for me, I also think about how oftentimes these acts of support save people's lives every day. They have certainly helped to save mine, and perhaps some of y'all can also relate. Showing up, listening, believing each other when we say we are hurt, offering practical ways of support, and refusing to look away when the hard stuff happens. This work is often invisible. It stands in the gap and it says, I'm here, I care, I see you, beloved, I love you. And it is so important. This work, being the hands and feet of Jesus, is the hard, gritty, life-giving, and transforming work that each of us are called and empowered to do. Love one another, bear witness to each other's griefs, act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with God. This episode was produced by me, Bonita Rockingham, with editing help from Alex Woodring and music by my dear friend Redfa Jan Titi Halawa. Holding It Together is a joint production of Women in Leadership and MCUSA. Look for us on our page on the MCUSA website, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast streaming site. I'm your host, Bonita Rockingham. Thanks for listening, y'all, and catch you next time on the flip side.